At some point in our training, nearly every single one of us has experienced some sort of challenge when it comes to vocal registration, whether that's in the form of a register break, a crack in the voice, an abrupt flip into falsetto, or perhaps there's a little spot in our range where the voice just becomes weak or wobbly and unstable. Maybe it flip-flops back and forth between mechanisms a little bit like a yodel or a pubescent boy. In any case, a major training goal for most singers is to be able to transition seamlessly between the different registers so that the voice operates more like an automatic transmission than like a manual transmission in which we sort of clunk and grind as we're switching between the gears. And when we achieve that seamlessness in our transitions, we create the auditory illusion that we're singing in just one register. Now, there are varied opinions as to how best to navigate this tricky, funky spot in our ranges, and a lot of those opinions are based on whether or not we should bridge early or bridge late. That is, whether or not we should allow the vocal instrument to transition into head-voice coordination lower in the scale, or delay that and transition higher in the scale. And my own views on this are that it really shouldn't be that black or white, because when we have such inflexible views on vocal registration, and especially when we bifurcate the scale and we train the registers in complete isolation, so we train chest voice, M1, head voice, M2, and ne'er the two shall meet, then that can create a very segmented scale. And that will contribute to those vocal breaks, contribute to those cracks and wobbles in the voice. So as I see it, when we transition between the registers, really depends. It depends on the singer, it depends on the song, it depends on the musical style or genre, and it depends on the singer's artistic goals. In between bridging early and bridging late, there's a fair bit of wiggle room that we can take advantage of for artistic purposes. So today I'm going to begin a discussion about vocal registration. And realistically, this is going to require several videos because it's a very complex topic. Not because I'm trying to overcomplicate it, but if you've been working on this transition area in your range for any length of time, you can probably attest to the fact that it requires that we get a number of aspects of our coordination in balance. Vocal registration is both a physiological and an acoustical phenomenon. So not only do we have to balance out levels of breath pressure and airflow with glottal resistance efforts, glottal compression, but because of the changing relationships between the harmonics of the sung pitch and the resonance frequencies of the vocal tract, the formants, we also have to make subtle adjustments to our resonance, to our vowels, as we move through the passaggio area and higher up. Now, I will talk about the breath and vowel modification in separate videos, but today I want to keep the focus of this video a little bit narrower and teach on the topics of glottal compression and closed quotient and give you 3 exercises that you can use to help achieve a better balance as you're transitioning between the registers. So when we're talking about glottal compression, we're really talking about the mechanism or the action of drawing the vocal folds together and keeping them together as we sing. Now, there are a few different means by which we can do this, and there are also varying degrees of glottal compression that we can apply to the sound that will give us different amplitudes, different loudness levels, as well as different tone qualities. So again, there's a little bit of wiggle room here. For a significant portion of our ranges, we rely pretty heavily upon the thyroarytenoid muscles, the TA muscles for short, to provide that glottal compression. Now, those TA muscles are the non-vibrating muscular body of the vocal folds, and they provide what we call medial compression. That is, they draw the vocal folds together from the middle. But, and this is really important, the TA muscles are not the only muscles responsible for providing glottal compression. At the back of the glottis, we have the arytenoid cartilages, and we have the interarytenoid muscles and the lateral cricoarytenoid muscles that help to draw the vocal folds together from the back and provide that glottal compression. Now, this is probably a little bit more anatomical detail than you were prepared for today, but my reasons for sharing this detail are twofold. First of all, I want you to understand that the TA muscles, which we tend to associate with chest voice or the lower mechanism or M1 of the voice, are not the only means by which we can create adequate glottal compression as we move higher in the scale. And my second reason for sharing this with you is because what you will probably discover is that there's a little bit of a transfer of balance between the muscular tissue compression and that cartilaginous compression. And we have to allow that to happen. This is a proverbial passing of the baton, a very fluid, flexible, dynamic coordination. If we do not encourage that flexibility of the instrument, if we don't encourage graduated adjustments in our coordination as we move higher in the scale, then we get what we call static laryngeal function, in which the instrument just sort of gets stuck in one coordination. And that coordination tends to be carried up or down until we get to a point where we sort of have to force a shift, an abrupt shift or flip into the next register, because the instrument just gets to a point where it can no longer go higher or lower in that exact same coordination. The closed quotient refers to the amount of time during each vibratory cycle of the vocal folds that the vocal folds are making contact with each other, that they're touching. And there's a little bit of a relationship between certain muscle balances and the length of the closed quotient. So for the most part, generally speaking, the more TA involvement we have, so the more medial compression we have, the longer the closed quotient. As we're moving up the scale from that lower register, if we allow the voice to become louder and louder and louder and increasingly strident, what happens is our closed quotient gets longer and longer and longer, to the point where we start to get a pressing at the glottal level. We call that pressed phonation. And that will create a significant challenge for us when it comes to trying to transition smoothly, seamlessly into the higher register where that closed quotient is shorter. So if instead we anticipate those shifts and make graduated adjustments as we move higher, adjustments of the breath, adjustments of that closed quotient or the glottal compression, adjustments of the vowel, we will instead be able to match levels of closed quotient between the registers, at least around those transition points. So as we move higher up in chest, we need to start releasing some of that medial compression so that that closed quotient doesn't get longer and longer and longer. And as we transition into the higher coordination of the voice, we also need to lengthen the closed quotient a little bit so that it matches a little bit more closely the length of the closed quotient in the upper chest register. Now this seems really, really complicated and very scientific, but again, it's all about balance. And I find for myself that when I'm moving through that break area around that A, B flat, B, for guys it happens around that E, F, F sharp, G range, there will be a sense that that control is shifting. We are passing that proverbial baton between the TAs and those cartilages at the back. And it's not something that I can consciously control per se, but if I consciously focus on ensuring that I'm not just suddenly releasing and disconnecting the sound, what happens is I feel a sense of having to work a little bit harder, not in a strained muscular way. It's really more like working differently, but there's definitely a sense of I want to release. I want to just let the voice go lighter and move into this lower mechanism. But what I do is I somewhat resist that for several notes, because again, I'm trying to create that seamlessness. All right, without further ado, let's get to the exercises. So all of today's exercises are based on a hum, but not just any kind of hum. This is a hum that feels as though it has really strong acoustic energy right here. In fact, it almost feels as though it's originating or initiating from there, even though we know physiologically that's not actually what's happening, and that it's just an illusion of placement. But in any case, it feels as though it's right here. It's almost a twangy wah, 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 feels like it's right there. And we don't want the hum to feel as though, or to sound as though it's pushing from the throat, those muscles there. And we also don't want the sound of the tongue root tensing, tightening, retracting, or depressing. That's a Kermit the Frog sound. Very gagged, right? We don't want either of those distortions in the hum. Again, we want this feeling of passivity in the throat, this feeling of release. Right? Feels really energized here, feels really released in here. And as we're singing the exercises, and as we're singing anything, the songs that we're working on, we want this sense that all of the notes are emanating from exactly the same place. We don't want this sense of things kind of shifting around all the time, high, low, front, back. Instead, we want this sense that all of our notes are emanating from exactly the same place, that they're all being produced on the same plane, so to speak. And this is really important because singers who struggle with vocal registration are often not aware of the inconsistencies in their coordination, the inconsistencies in their resonance from note to note. And they create these abrupt shifts that tend to highlight their issues with vocal registration. Today's first exercise is based on mezzo staccato or staccato, in which we detach the individual notes so that we're reinitiating the tone for each note. And we're going to sing a major triad. And as we're moving up the scale, we want to make sure that we're not digging into the sound, that we're not muscling our way up the sound, because that will cause a break higher up. And this exercise will help to cue our instruments to the right balance, the right amount of vocal effort that we need as we transition between the registers. Does have a lot of vocal hyperfunction, a lot of constriction and tension, you will probably squeeze through this exercise. So you'll need to work out some of that closed-throatedness first to be able to really achieve good results with this exercise. And the second exercise that we're going to do today also is based on this hum, the hum that feels like it's here. And we're going to take a 5-note pattern. Get to the bottom, we're immediately going to go into a little pitch glide, a little portamento. And here, especially with that little slide, we want to make sure that we're not letting the sound fall back, we're not pulling back, and we're not engaging that tongue root. We want to make sure that we're using just enough effort at the glottal level to keep things connected and consistent. And again, we don't want to push through the sound, we don't want to choke off or throttle the tone. Portamentos are really great. Any kind of glissandos or pitch glides are really, really useful because what they do is they encourage that laryngeal flexibility. They encourage flexibility of the instrument as we transition from register to register. And our third exercise today starts exactly like the second one did with that hummed 5-note scale pattern. But as we get to the bottom again, we're going to switch to the vowel O. But we want that O to feel like it's emanating from exactly the same place as that hum. Right? Here we want to make sure that we're not feeling as though things are shifting all over the place as we move from note to note to note to note. And if we allow for that flexibility of our instrument, but at the same time keep a degree of consistency in our sound and never allow those adjustments to be abrupt, we will have a much easier time with our vocal registration transitions. All right, so I'm a little bit spent right now, so I need to go and have a little bit of a vocal rest because, as most of you know, I've been pretty ill for the past 6 weeks and I haven't really done much in the way of singing, so I realized that my Demonstrations today were not really the best, but I hope that you nevertheless got something really useful out of this video. Please let me know how you do with these exercises. Feel free to leave your comments and questions in the comment section below. You're always welcome to email me at Karyn@SingWise.com, that's Karyn @SingWise.com, or message me privately on the SingWise Vocals Facebook page, and I will do my very, very best to help guide you through your registration challenges. In the meantime, if you haven't already done so, please give this video a thumbs up and also consider subscribing to this channel so that you'll be notified every time I post new videos. Thank you so much for watching.